Hi, my name is Avais Hamid Khan, and today I will be presenting the paper Speculative Design for Education, using participatory methods to map out design challenges and opportunities for education in Pakistan. I'm presenting this research on behalf of my colleagues Neela Mijaz from the World Bank, and Sarah Matthews, Dr. Stephen Snow, and Dr. Ben Matthews from the University of Queensland. This paper offers directions for the design of education technologies in Pakistan through a plural, culturally rooted discussion with 21 key stakeholders using speculative proposals. We highlight opportunities and considerations for localizing design for education and reframing the value of education in Pakistan. This paper is part of a broader research program that explores how can we leverage materiality of designerly practices, tools, and methods to make design easier to understand and use by non-designers. According to UNICEF, Pakistan has the second highest out of school child population in the world, with almost 19 million children between the ages of 5 and 16 not attending school. On average, a child starting school at age 4 completes a little under 5 years of actual learning instead of the benchmark 9 years. Additionally, 75% of children aged 10 are unable to read and understand a short age appropriate text. This means not only are there children out of school, but even those in school are not learning. As the fifth most populous country in the world, with a population growing at 2% per annum, the challenges within the education system are most likely to continue increasing in scale, with long-term effects on the country's human capital development and economic prosperity. The complexity of the challenges that persist within the Pakistani education context are unique to the local landscape, inherently complex and multidimensional. We categorize these challenges into two broad areas: access to education and quality of learning. Disruptions to the education delivery services due to the COVID-19 pandemic have created unique opportunities and an appetite within the local landscape to explore alternative education service delivery mechanisms. Immediately after school closures, the government of Pakistan led a multimodal broadcast initiative called TeleSchool, which uses terrestrial broadcast media for delivering educational content, with the potential to reach 95% of the population. This model serves as an example of how radically innovative uses of even existing technology infrastructure can act as a catalyst, not just to mitigate the impact of disruptions due to the pandemic, but also potentially reach out of school children. While cognizant of the fact that a host of good minds have attempted to address the challenges of the education sector in Pakistan before, we approached the topography of the education service delivery landscape with a different framing, a designerly lens that adopts a pluralistic, collaborative, and decolonial approach towards speculative design that we clearly differentiate from existing HCI for D work within the paper. As a form of inquiry, speculative design allows us to envision alternative futures by suspending constraints of our current realities, enabling us to uncover novel perspectives to approach wicked problems such as those prevalent within this context. This allows us to explore both future and near future possibilities to address systemic challenges as opposed to being constrained by immediately practical solutions. It is, however, important to factor in the contextual particularities. That is, how can we leverage design opportunities by harnessing characteristics unique to the local context and culture? Examples such as Balagamwala's games Arranged, which facilitates conversations about the complex social issue of arranged marriages situated within Pakistan, as well as Paltering Politicians, a game which explores contemporary challenges and realities extant within the local political landscape, draw on contextual particulars to structure critical discourse, reflection, and dialogue. Similarly, local culture can also be leveraged. For instance, UNESCO Islamabad's project, which uses Pakistani truck art, known globally for its unique, colorful murals, intricate patterns, and use of poetry as a non-traditional medium to advocate for girls' education. These examples highlight how we might ground materials in conversations within the particulars of the context. We conducted semi-structured interviews and a design activity with 21 participants across 15 sessions. The sessions lasted between 1 to 2 hours, conducted remotely via Zoom and the interactive whiteboarding tool Miro. Participants were selected using a purposive sampling strategy. The selection criteria included practitioners who worked on ground within the education sector, educationists, policymakers, development specialists, researchers, and practitioners who worked within the local non-education industry or technology sectors, as well as students who have been part of the education sector. All participants were residents of Pakistan, identified as Pakistanis, and had been educated in Pakistan. We developed 17 speculative proposals framed as futuristic fictional concepts addressing some of the contemporary challenges within education delivery, building upon documented challenges from various industry reports, high impact critical areas of interest to the World Bank from ongoing projects about educational reform in Pakistan, and the lived experiences of the first and second authors of education in Pakistan. For example, the concept of language karaoke was designed in response to the diversity of languages within Pakistan, with over 73 unique languages spread across the country. Historically, language has been an inhibitor for assimilation of regional residents into urban centers. Similarly, concepts such as class in a box and drone projections were designed for remote delivery to regions where infrastructure development might not be viable, or children must travel long distances to the nearest school. These concepts were used with open-ended scenes inspired by unfinished comics as a means to facilitate participant-generated world building. Participants fleshed out the open-ended contexts, used pre-learned conventions such as using speech bubbles to annotate and flesh out the scenes, developed their own speculative proposals and concepts, mapped proposals to scenes, and leveraged the convenience of the technology to share materials locally available to them to support the discussion. Through our analysis of the data, we generated themes that orient to understanding the context, pragmatic considerations, and challenges associated with implementing technological interventions. The findings are organized under two meta categories: opportunities and considerations for localizing design for education and reframing the value of education in Pakistan. I will unpack some of the findings here. Leveraging situated knowledge, highlighting the importance of creating localized content. A participant stated, a child in Jaranwala, a rural location, which is an agriculture community, or a child in Thar Desert, a rural remote area, is being evaluated on their ability to identify components of a computer, which they've never seen and is not relevant to their lives. But a child in Karachi or Lahore, which are metropolitan cities, is not being tested on their ability to identify different types of seeds. So the funds of knowledge that the Jaranwala kid has is complex knowledge, useful knowledge, and knowledge that is used to create food for the population. Really important. That knowledge in the standardized, urbanized, capitalized knowledge systems becomes less important than the funds of knowledge of a child in the urban economy. This quote highlights that while the basic learning outcomes across various subjects should remain consistent across the country, the examples and settings used in teaching activities could be tailored to the indigenous location of the child's environment. This also extends to the reframing of value of education. A participant shares an anecdote of visiting a rural community. They say, "This is very funny. I went to a Chachaji, an older gentleman, and I said, 'You have 4 kids who are out of school. You should send them to school.' He asked, 'Why?' And I said, 'They will be happy.' He then asked, 'Did you go to school? Are you happy?' To which I responded, 'No, Chachaji, you keep your kids with you.' This exchange presents a very succinct but ultimately vivid picture of the reality of the disconnect between the value of the potential benefits ascribed to completing a formal education from an outsider's perspective when compared to that which is actually valued by the locals. Receiving a basic education within Pakistan does not directly correlate to upward socioeconomic mobility, therefore value must be reconsidered. The pandemic has fundamentally changed how education content is distributed and opened up the opportunity to reimagine the future of education delivery systems. A participant states, "Let's not go back to the old excuses. It was practically unthinkable to put together a program like Teleschool within the time frame that it was developed in. The old and tested model is no longer an option." If somebody says the design fiction approach is futuristic, just tell them that, did the federal government ever believe that they can launch a TV channel within a matter of weeks? Did the Punjab government ever believe that they could have a TV channel running across 500 cable operators in a matter of weeks? Where did all this content come from? How did all that happen? It happened. Did people know in February that most meetings would take place online and everybody would find a way to connect to everybody else? So it all happened and it seemed futuristic in February 2020. The people who provide support, financial or otherwise, need to put their foot down. I then think there's an opportunity to bring about real change in the mindset. From the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich, if the last 6 months have taught us one thing, that is immediate, quick U-turn and turnaround is absolutely possible when there is no other option. It's just that we think there are other options. This work presents a starting point for the use of speculative and design-early approaches to explore education in Pakistan and its multidimensional complexities, not just as a means of inquiring into the problem space and mapping existing conditions, but as an approach with the potential to change the nature of the conversations that can take place when novel technological proposals intersect with policy issues, local cultural conditions, infrastructural capacities, and limitations. informative ideas about the nature of education itself. We thank you for listening and hope to continue the conversation offline.